Hey there everybody, this is Scott at Standing Ground Studio, and if there's one thing I've said probably too many times on this channel, is that the system is exposing its own corruption. And the top secret yet totally public spy games being played out in the public right now are a prime example of this. So what I've learned over the course of this year is that by the time we fully expose that corruption, public consensus will be destroyed. The main method seems to be, we need to get everyone exposing each other's secrets in the sloppiest way possible to drive up endless speculation. And this clip right here on the screen is probably one of the craziest examples I've ever seen. I'm going to play a little over a minute of it, and then we're going to talk about it.
Good evening. There will be no troop movements or a single shot fired, but NBC News has learned exclusively that the United States is poised for an unprecedented retaliatory assault against Russia in response to its interference in the U.S. election.
NBC News has learned the CIA is in the initial phase of a wide-ranging cyber retaliation designed to be both clandestine and embarrassing. Sources with direct knowledge of the operation tell us the target, the Kremlin leadership, particularly Vladimir Putin. If ordered by the White House, the CIA could manipulate things as specific as the banking accounts and personal phones of the Kremlin leadership.
There's a great deal of offshore money that has moved out of Russia through the hands of oligarchs. It would be extremely embarrassing if that were revealed.
The covert operation, the sources tell NBC News, is being run by a super-secret group inside the CIA. Top secret documents indicate they have a staff of hundreds and a budget in the hundreds of millions.
So there you have it. The CIA is conducting a top secret cyber attack on Russia, which is being broadcast by NBC Nightly News for some reason. They say it in plain English that there is a super secret group in the CIA with a budget in the hundreds of millions. We're also going to expose a bunch of dirty secrets of the Kremlin, possibly right before the election. And they also go on to mention that US agents have been at work in Russia for years to help make this happen, and that it really ought to be a public affair. They really do make that point. So talk about trying to send a message to the masses. So thematically, we have a major dose of truth in plain sight for the public to see, but it's mixed with information so ridiculous it has to be disinformation. But let's check in with controlled opposition first. So here's Edward Snowden on the left pointing out the obvious, which is that they're being way too obvious. And he's specifically talking about Joe Biden saying the same thing on Meet the Press, but it's the same deal. Then on the right, we have WikiLeaks, who points out that it wouldn't be the CIA that conducts an attack like this, it would be the NSA. So it leaves the question, why did they do it? And how about that timing? Announcing it right before the election seems a little strange to me. And if you watch that video to the end, I'll leave a link below, they say that Obama's administration is conflicted about the decision and that he would have to sign off on it personally. And that brings up our next big left versus right conflict, which is in plain sight. So my main point from the rest of this video on is just notice how public everything I show you is. The premise of it all is that the establishment is going to look like it's losing control little by little. As more lies surface, they'll continue to clamp down on the truth and our rights more and more. So on the one side, which is the image on the left there, we have the establishment making every push to say that Russia is behind not just the DNC hacks, but every possible leak going on right now. However, the Great Awakening is underway, and we're not going to be fooled, so we've got celebrities and thought leaders making sure they raise awareness about government corruption. So on the right side of the screen, we have Oliver Stone on CNN, this was like a month ago, and he had just released his feature, Snowden, about Edward Snowden, and he's on the air on CNN saying that basically two central truths emerged from the movie. One, the US deployed a global surveillance system non-democratically. Snowden exposed that with love of country. Two, the hack of the DNC emails being a Russian aggression is a great fiction. The Democrats hacked themselves, or so a source has told him, and that we shouldn't ignore the contents of what's been revealed, and that 4 DNC officials had resigned and that a young staffer was killed. The host pretends not to know about it, says it sounds like a conspiracy theory, wishes she had more time to discuss it, and then she dismisses it. But again, take note how it's on CNN. The mainstream media is allowing these arguments to happen. And it amazes me how many thought leaders in the truth movement tell you to constantly never trust what the media shows you, nor trust anyone that the media trusts. Unless it's Edward Snowden, and that's totally fine. He's a hero. But for someone who's a thorn in the side of Big Brother, he sure does get the spotlight pretty often. He's an enemy of the state, yet he gets prime time on mainstream media. And here on the screen is a perfect example of Snowden playing his role publicly. He's a narrator or mediator to the public on a complicated topic. So he's allowing you to feel like you understand what's happening if you're paying attention. And on the right side of the screen is an article from 2 months ago, and it caught my attention the moment I saw it. I just never had time to report it. But look at that opening line right here. Now that it appears that powerful NSA cyber weapons have been leaked to the public, a former spy warns the United States might get caught red-handed. This is one of the many reasons why I keep telling people the system is exposing its own corruption, because at this point they're basically telling us in plain English. And here they are cluing us in on what the modern-day international spy situation is all about, down here. Why? Because we're supposed to be aware of it. They have clearly been raising this issue in the public consciousness for some time. Okay, so here's the article, and what happened was that some of the NSA's tools they used to hack other countries got leaked to the public. And one of the immediate concerns is that those tools can be used by anybody now to possibly rob banks, steal government secrets, or expose personal lives. So there's increased potential for anarchy out there. So then Snowden chimed in saying there's an extra risk. And you can hear it right here. Computer security researchers around the world are now reviewing computer networks for these tools, and wherever they find this leaked code, they'll know the NSA was spying. Then you get this quote right here. Here's an easy-to-understand explanation of Snowden's technical commentary on Twitter this morning, in which he describes how modern-day computer spying works, because we all need to get caught up on this, so modern-day spying 101. In short, what they're saying is that a country can launch a hack on another country, and what they'll do is they'll launch it from a third country to disguise where it came from. But they tend to leave little bits and pieces of binaries behind, is what they call it, and if you know what to look for, you'll know what country it came from. The flip of it all is that America is, of course, guilty of this too, like we didn't know. And there's nothing new about this happening. But what is new this time around is that someone is actually calling out the U.S. in a way that will help other countries detect American spy activity. This is in the shadow of the U.S. saying that the Russians were behind the DNC hack. And he's saying that it's possible that now this is a message to the U.S. You toy with foreign politics too. Don't be hypocrites. And as I read this last part right here, ask yourself, are they demonizing Edward Snowden or are they building him up to look like more of a hero? So he ended his screed by pointing out an interesting tidbit. Even though these NSA tools have just been leaked, it appears that they were stolen back in 2013, a short time after Snowden blew the whistle on the NSA spying on Americans. At that point, the NSA went into lockdown mode and ramped up security. So ironically, the NSA's response to Snowden's alleged treachery might have actually prevented enemy hackers from continuing to steal NSA tools. You're welcome, NSA Gov. Lots of love. So here's that same conclusion on a slide. And I don't know about you, but that does not sound like the establishment is trying to hush up these leaks, nor are they silencing Snowden. And this is supposed to be at a time where the public trust in the media is at an all-time low. Which amazes me that a lot of channels and blogs out there will tell you to never trust the government or mainstream media, and fair enough, you shouldn't. If something doesn't fit their narrative or their agenda, it's either demonized and misrepresented or suffers a media blackout altogether. However, numerous times, Edward Snowden has been brought on the air and considered an expert in his field, so it's a rather severe break in the truther narrative, and one of the larger offenders in the truther community that I see is the Free Thought Project. Because they'll say he's a hero being silenced by the media, when really he's an underdog in their whistleblower narrative. But we also get articles and op-eds like this one. Edward Snowden is a saint, not a sinner, on CNN. Now this is an op-ed from Jimmy Wales, who's the founder of Wikipedia, not to be confused with WikiLeaks. And I pulled a few key quotes from this one, where it says, but what may be even more important than legal reforms and technical changes is the public debate Snowden instigated. His disclosures brought about a change in consciousness, reinstating privacy as a central value and newly incentivizing the protection of information activists and dissidents abroad. Later on, that said, a brave young American whistleblower has given us the most important tool in our fight to reclaim the internet, knowledge. For his act of conscience, he deserves our overwhelming appreciation. Now, for every article like this, there's an opponent saying the opposite. But here's a video that was paired up with the same article. And as you listen to it, I'm going to play back about a minute of it. Ask yourself these questions. Does it sound like there's a media blackout and they're demonizing him? Or does it sound like we're bringing up the conversation and raising awareness about this issue in general?
I'm not glad about anything about Edward Snowden, but once you become aware of information about something, it's important that you respond to it. If he were a true whistleblower, he would have come to people in the United States and turned himself in with his information and sought protection under our whistleblower laws.
I'm glad that we are finally having this debate. He obviously drove much of this debate. And frankly, I believe this debate should have started long before Edward Snowden, and it should have been started by the leadership of the intelligence community.
He broke the law very severely, and that has to be dealt with. I don't know that the country was really damaged by his breaking the law. I mean, the administration has said so, but they haven't said how. It also, I suppose, is an illustration of the fact that our whistleblower laws don't work properly, that he felt he had to do this.
I don't support anyone's decision to violate the law. I will say that since some of these programs have become declassified in recent years, it's gotten a little bit easier to talk about these programs and to talk about some of the concerns that I've had with the Patriot Act.
That sounds to me like it's time for us to have a discussion about this divisive topic. This is clearly another scripted issue where we're being asked to take sides. But I've noticed how the spy theme has been in our news and entertainment all year, and I have a few examples lined up here. It's a part of our programming. So I noticed stories like this popping up all throughout the year on CNN in their Declassified series. They had dozens of stories and exposés on spy stories reaching far back into the 20th century all the way up till present day. They'll give you insights and tips like what you need for a successful information drop, sneak inside a suspect's home, create a cover identity. Others get you questioning about how you're being spied on today by foreign states. So how 100,000 foreign spies live in the U.S.? Do Chinese cyber spies watch you? And who's spying on the U.S. today and how? So they've been raising our consciousness about this all year long. And it's in our entertainment also. So here's a show that's coming out, basically came out mid-October. And it's called Berlin Station. And you can see the tagline here, a mission to uncover lies and secrets. And it ties in with that theme we've been seeing all year, probably longer than that. Not everything is as it seems. So I have a clip from one of their videos. Listen to this scripted conversation between two of the show's creators. Again, it's going to be about raising the question of what do we think about the likes of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange.
And it's in that scene, the monkey bar, between Daniel and Ingrid, that you have this sort of conflict of opinions.
You know American foreign policy kills more civilians than all terrorists put together.
Sorry, we don't live in a perfect world, Ingrid.
She speaks in a way for the voice of Thomas Shaw, whether Thomas Shaw is an individual or a group. This is a group idea. Daniel, of course, is much more a loyal servant of the Central Intelligence Agency.
For us, it's a key scene because at the heart of it, we see it as America talking to itself.
Yeah.
Having the conversation, the debate as to whether the likes of Thomas Shaw, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange are heroes or traitors.
And again, it's that left-right conversation that we're having. And if we jump into some of their ads off of Facebook, so they'll post stuff from articles like from the Huffington Post, and I've seen a number of these where ex-CIA operatives tell you what it's like to be back in normal life, what it was like to be a spy, what it was like, what the transition's like, how it's normal, how it isn't. Again, you get more tips and tricks on how to maybe uncover and somebody's lying to you. And that doesn't mean people are going to suddenly become paranoid. They might just try it on their friends a little bit. It's a little bit more engaging. And speaking of engagement, do you have what it takes to be a CIA agent? So if you click that link, it takes you to a choose-your-own-adventure spy game where you get to choose your way through a mission that they put in front of you. And each time you make a selection, they give a nice description of what a spy would do. So here's one of those examples. So one is you have to contact somebody. Would you use your cell phone or a phone booth? And then they give you this answer here. Since all calls can ultimately be traced, at least by the NSA, and surveillance cameras are everywhere in cities, have a secondary backup plan with another meeting time in place before your rendezvous goes south. It's mildly entertaining, but it keeps giving you information like that, and it's really just a segue into watching a full episode of the show where you can consume more spy-related content. So my main point here is that it's easier to entertain people with the truth rather than make a lesson out of it. It's one thing to reach your audience with a message, but it's more important to keep them engaged. They'll remember it much more deeply. And again, CNN has their own version of it over here. So again, the lines between fiction and reality are blurring. People are going to have a hard time keeping anything straight through all of this. And we've seen Hollywood glorify Julian Assange in the past, but now we're bringing them both up, him and Edward Snowden again. Do we trust him? Do we not? And up top, we have the tagline that we've seen countless times in our programming, and typically it sounds like, which side will you choose, or pick a side. I've thrown a few older examples down just so you see what I'm talking about. One from Designated Survivor, it's time to choose a side. Regards to Civil War, pick a side, choose your side, choose a side. And Colony is a show that's about deciding to work with the establishment or against it in a modern-day police state. Which side would you choose? Collaborate, resist, red versus blue. So choosing a side is a subliminal that is put out there to keep people in the left versus right or red versus blue mindset. It doesn't matter which side you choose when both sides are controlled. And here's the most ominous version I've ever seen. You don't have to pick a side, but you will. In other words, this is in your future whether or not you choose to accept it, so expect it. And given everything I've just shown you, how much more direct do they need to be? So I'm going to give you my final thoughts, and then there's a few more afterwards, incidentally. Number one, the cyber war, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, etc. are all a part of our programming. The elite are raising public awareness slowly so that the people become responsive when the time is right. The system is exposing the old guard to give us an enemy in the most fragmented way possible, so there's no consensus. Truth will only come out in order to create more chaos. The revolution is pre-planned and will not defeat the New World Order. It will help to create it. And I say that time and again, that's half the reason why I made this channel. The other half is that Jesus Christ or Yeshua is the only way. Salvation is a free gift that you have to accept. No one can force you. Now, I've given this conclusion numerous times before, so last weekend I figured I would just end on this slide, fade to black, be done with it. But we had just witnessed the major DDoS cyber hack where we had that internet shutdown for like a few hours or a day or something like that. So a couple hours after thinking about this slide, a hacker group took responsibility. And they call themselves the New World Hackers Group. Well, that's appropriate considering what I just said, so I slapped it down on the presentation. And it has all the themes I just talked about. The hackers that are claiming it, they had people in both Russia and in China and elsewhere, which brings up the question, was it state-sponsored or were they just rogue hackers? They did claim to have some tie-ins with Anonymous, though they're not a part of that collective. And they used the Internet of Things to overwhelm the servers at Dyn. And just a couple of those points raised a thought in my head, and this video would not be complete if I didn't mention it. We have to talk about this show for just a moment. And that's Mr. Robot. Talk about programming. So you can see over on the left, you put truth in plain sight. Our democracy has been hacked. We are finally awake. It's time to awaken, raise our awareness of what's going on. And if you don't know this show, it's one of those shows that has headlines like this written about it. The creator also thinks it's weird that things in the show keep coming true somehow. And if you haven't seen it and you go and read reviews, it's only a matter of time before you get descriptions like this. And this is about season 2. We see glimpses of unrest, protests, possibly rioting. There's a strong sense that the world is slowly, methodically crumbling and no one knows how to repair things. Because the world of Mr. Robot is our own, right down to the presence of President Obama and Nancy Grace. It almost feels like an extension of societal unrest we're currently experiencing in the real world. It's one of those shows that blurs the lines between reality and fiction, and this show in particular is amazing at almost reaching through the screen and pulling you into their world through the narration. And I'm not really going to scratch the surface on this, I just had to mention it, and it ties into that whole New World Order slide I just put up there. So there's some spoilers in here, so if you want to, you can just stop the video now and go watch the show if you'd like. But they're talking about the end of season 2, and we get this, one of those articles that's written with a wink and a nod, like the writer kind of knows what it's getting at. So it says, is Mr. Robot marching toward the apocalypse? And in it, there's a character that tends to know way more than she should, and she mentions there's a deliberate phase of a grander conspiracy to, quote, take humanity to the next level by setting the stage for the collapse of Evil Corp. And Evil Corp is representative of all the evil corporations in the world. So like I said, when it's time for all the truth to come out, that's about when the current way of things is going to collapse. So he asked the question, is this entire season of Mr. Robot about order as it collapses into chaos, or chaos being wielded as a weapon in the service of a new order? And then this is about a specific scene. Did Angela kind of deal with the devil? And if so, on what terms and at what cost? It's another lingering question pushing Mr. Robot into a space of near-apocalyptic dread as the episode ends. And if Mr. Robot really is heading toward the end of the world as we know it, well, at least that means we're on the cusp of a revelation. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. A lot's going to be coming out in the open very soon, and it's not going to do us any good. It's going to help to bring the house down. And that just takes me back to my final thoughts. The revolution is pre-planned, and it will not defeat the New World Order. Jesus Christ is the only way, and I know his namesake's been misused endless times like he said it would, but salvation is the only way. It is a free gift that you have to accept. No one can force it on you. If you have any questions, please ask them below. Thank you for watching. Please share this video. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and let me know what you think. Thank you for your time.